Hello, science fans. Today we're diving into a topic that affects every single one of us, no matter where we live or what we do. Let's talk about heat, a pressing issue for our planet and one that's becoming impossible to ignore. The rising temperatures aren't just numbers on a weather report, they're a warning sign, a signal that our world is changing faster than we ever imagined. Imagine a summer day getting hotter and hotter, not just for a day but for weeks on end. Streets shimmer in the heat and the air feels heavy, almost unbreathable. For many, this is no longer a rare event. It's becoming the new normal. This isn't science fiction, it's our reality. Around the globe, cities are breaking heat records year after year, and communities are struggling to adapt. The Earth has a fever, and it's worsening. Droughts are lasting longer, water sources are drying up, and crops are withering under relentless sun. Record-breaking temperatures, wildfires, and heat waves are becoming the norm. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a dangerous trend that threatens our way of life. At what point does it become unlivable? This is a crucial question. Vulnerable groups, like the elderly, children, and outdoor workers, are already feeling the brunt of extreme heat. It's not just discomfort, it's about human survival. When the body can't cool itself, heat stroke and dehydration can set in quickly, turning a hot day into a life-threatening emergency. Our bodies are finely tuned machines with limits. We depend on sweating and shade to keep our core temperature safe, but there's only so much we can handle before the risk becomes too great. As we emit more greenhouse gases, we're raising the planet's thermostat. Our factories, cars, and power plants pump carbon dioxide and other pollutants into the air, trapping heat and pushing global temperatures higher. The question isn't if, but when and where parts of the world will become too hot for people to live safely. Some regions are already seeing mass migrations as families seek cooler, safer places to call home. Historically, we've thrived in predictable climates. Our cities, farms, and ways of life were built around stable weather patterns that are now shifting before our eyes. Climate change is rewriting these rules. Once fertile lands are turning to dust while other areas face floods and storms made worse by rising heat. Entire regions could become uninhabitable due to extreme heat. Imagine having to leave your home, your community, because it's simply too dangerous to stay. This forces us to confront the consequences of our actions. The choices we make today, about energy, transportation, and conservation, will shape the world for generations to come. Let's explore the science behind deadly heat and the danger zones. Researchers are working tirelessly to understand how heat waves form, who's most at risk, and what we can do to protect ourselves. But it's also a story of hope and resilience. Communities are coming together to plant trees, create cooling centers, and support those most vulnerable to heat. Understanding the problem is the first step to solving it. Education and awareness empower us to take action, both individually and collectively. The future isn't written yet. We are the authors. By working together, demanding change, and making smarter choices, we can shape a safer, cooler world for everyone. Let's get to it. When we talk about unlivable heat, we're not just referring to a day that's uncomfortably hot or a temperature that makes you sweat a little more than usual. Unlivable heat is a deadly combination, a mix of extreme heat and high humidity that pushes the human body to its absolute limits. On a dry, hot day, your body can usually cope by sweating and letting that sweat evaporate, which cools you down. But when humidity is high, the air is already saturated with moisture and sweat just sits on your skin, unable to evaporate. This means your body's natural cooling system is overwhelmed and you start to overheat, even if you're not moving or exerting yourself. Sweating is our main defense against heat, but it only works if the air can absorb that moisture. In humid conditions, sweat lingers, leaving you feeling sticky and uncomfortable. But more importantly, it stops your body from cooling down. As your internal temperature rises, you become vulnerable to heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and even organ failure if the exposure continues. Unlivable heat is when the air is so hot and humid that even sitting quietly in the shade, drinking water and resting, a healthy adult can't cool down enough to survive for long. This isn't just about feeling miserable or uncomfortable, it's about reaching a point where the environment itself becomes a threat to human life. Scientists use a measurement called the wet bulb temperature to define this threshold. It combines heat and humidity into a single number that tells us when conditions become truly dangerous. Around the world, more places are approaching this limit, with record-breaking heat waves and rising humidity levels making some regions nearly uninhabitable for parts of the year. Wet bulb temperatures in the low 30s Celsius, around 86 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, are already hazardous, especially for those without access to air conditioning or adequate shelter. Vulnerable groups like the elderly, young children, and people with health conditions are at even greater risk, as their bodies struggle even more to cope with extreme heat. Understanding what unlivable heat means and how to recognize the warning signs is crucial for preparing ourselves and our communities for a warming world. As climate change drives more frequent and intense heat waves, knowing the science behind unlivable heat can help us take action to protect ourselves and those we care about. Let's dive into the science of wet bulb temperature. Imagine a thermometer with a wet cloth around the bulb. The wet bulb temperature measures how effectively you can cool down by sweating. In dry air, water evaporates quickly, cooling the bulb. In humid air, evaporation slows and the wet bulb temperature rises. A wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius is the upper limit for human survival. At this point, no amount of sweating can cool the body. Even at lower wet bulb temperatures, vulnerable people are at risk. These conditions make outdoor labor hazardous. As global temperatures rise, dangerous wet bulb events are becoming more frequent. Understanding this helps us prepare for the challenges ahead. Where will dangerous wet bulb temperatures hit first? This is a question that climate scientists have been urgently trying to answer, as the stakes are incredibly high for millions of people living in vulnerable regions. Wet bulb temperature, which combines heat and humidity, is a critical measure of human survivability. When it gets too high, even healthy people resting in the shade can no longer cool themselves by sweating. Climate models show alarming results. Using advanced simulations and decades of weather data, scientists are able to predict where and when these dangerous conditions will emerge. The findings are sobering, pointing to a future where extreme heat and humidity could become the new normal in some parts of the world. Hot, humid regions near warm water bodies are most at risk. These areas already experience high temperatures, but as the planet warms, the risk of deadly wet bulb events increases dramatically. Cities built along coastlines, especially in the tropics, are particularly vulnerable. The Persian Gulf, South Asia, and parts of the Red Sea are hotspots. These regions are consistently highlighted in climate projections as the first to face life-threatening wet bulb temperatures. These areas are already experiencing extreme heat. In recent years, heat waves have become more frequent and intense, pushing local populations to their limits and straining infrastructure. The Persian Gulf, with cities like Dubai, is a major concern. Here, outdoor workers and residents face some of the harshest conditions on Earth, and the risk is only growing as temperatures continue to climb. Wet bulb temperatures have briefly exceeded 32 degrees Celsius, nearing the survival limit for humans. These events, though short-lived, are a stark warning of what could become more common in the near future. Under high emissions scenarios, these regions could regularly exceed 35 degrees Celsius by mid-century. This would make outdoor activity dangerous, and even short exposures could be deadly. South Asia, home to over 1 billion people, faces similar threats. The combination of dense populations, poverty, and limited access to cooling makes this region especially vulnerable to extreme heat events. With just 2 degrees Celsius of warming, agricultural heartlands could become unsafe for labor. This threatens food security and livelihoods, as millions depend on outdoor work to survive. Other vulnerable areas include the North China Plain and parts of Southeast Asia. These regions are already experiencing the impacts of rising temperatures, and the risks will only intensify. The deadly combination of heat and humidity is expanding. More and more communities are being exposed to conditions that challenge human health and survival. As global temperatures rise, these hot zones will grow, putting millions more at risk and reshaping how and where people can safely live and work. We must act to avoid this future. By reducing emissions, investing in adaptation, and supporting vulnerable communities, we can help ensure a safer, more resilient world for everyone. Extreme heat is already a reality for millions. In 2022, a brutal heat wave hit India and Pakistan. Temperatures soared to nearly 50 degrees Celsius with deadly humidity. Wet bulb temperatures reached lethal levels for outdoor workers. Street vendors, construction workers, and farmers faced unbearable conditions. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and power outages worsened the crisis. Europe, once known for mild summers, is also affected. The 2003 European heat wave caused over 70,000 deaths. Recent heat waves shattered records in the UK, France, and Spain. These stories are urgent warnings from the front lines. They show the human face of the climate crisis. Extreme heat disproportionately affects the vulnerable. The global poor, especially in tropical regions, are most at risk. Outdoor workers endure dangerous conditions to survive. Access to technology makes a huge difference. In wealthy countries, heat waves mean higher electricity bills. In poorer areas, they can be life-threatening. Age and health conditions increase vulnerability. Urban heat islands make cities hotter, endangering low-income residents. Marginalized communities often lack political power to demand protections. As heat events become more common, they will deepen inequalities. This is not just a health crisis, it's a human rights crisis. We must address these disparities to protect the most vulnerable. Unlivable heat triggers a cascade of crises. Agriculture suffers, leading to food shortages and price spikes. Extreme heat strains power grids, risking blackouts. Infrastructure like roads and railways can buckle under heat. Health systems are overwhelmed with heat-related illnesses. Poor air quality worsens respiratory problems. Heat affects mental health, limiting outdoor activities. Mass migration could result from unlivable regions. Climate migrants will strain resources and infrastructure. This creates complex political and humanitarian challenges. We must prepare for these interconnected crises. The time to act is now. We are not helpless against unlivable heat. Solutions exist at every level, from global to local. Cutting greenhouse gas emissions is crucial. Transitioning to clean energy can prevent further warming. Cities are leading with innovations like planting trees and cool roofs. Heat action plans save lives with early warnings and cooling centers. Community initiatives and public education build resilience. On a personal level, make your home heat resilient. Support climate action and use your voice for change. The fight against extreme heat is a team effort. Every player has a crucial role to play. Together, we can create a cooler, more sustainable world. Let's act now to protect our future. We've seen the science and heard the stories. The question of unlivable heat is no longer hypothetical. Our choices today will shape the future. We stand at a critical crossroads. The Earth's fever is a symptom of our actions. Think about your community's resilience, understand local risks, and become an advocate for change. Despair is easy, but purpose is powerful. Humans are problem solvers. We can tackle this challenge. Deploy clean energy and adaptation strategies quickly. Demand action from leaders and support innovators. The future is something we create together. Let's ensure our world remains a livable home for all.